Turn right onto Southeast 13th Street.
Hey, ducks. Okay. Hey, ducks. I have nothing to offer except friendship. Oh, you're really good-looking birds. Hello friends, welcome to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Today I'm going to be taking you to a couple of haunted locations around town. There's several haunted locations, places all over this area that people claim are haunted. There's been poltergeist activity at a few of these places. Right now we are in Evergreen Cemetery, a very historical cemetery. The founders of Fort Lauderdale are buried here. Many of them were exhumed from a cemetery in another part of town and then brought here in 1910 when this was established. This is the oldest intact cemetery in Fort Lauderdale. A lot of history here. Now, not everything that we're going to go to today is haunted. We came here specifically to visit the final resting place of a very important comedian, Leslie Nielsen. Here is his grave is somewhat humorous. I want to pay my respects to one of my favorite comedians of all time. He was in some amazing movies. I think more than 100 or 150 movies. Naked Gun, Airplane, Naked Gun 2.5, Naked Gun 33 1/3, many other movies. His humor was very unique. So let's pay our respects. Whenever other comedians would ask advice of Leslie, this is what he would tell them. Sit down whenever you can. It's written right on the back of this bench so you can reflect on his final resting place right here. Not a lot of attention is drawn to this, but it's a very important person in our American history, American comedy. I love that movie, Airplane. It's so good. There's a lot of interesting grave markers in here. Are these your favorite grave markers in the cemetery? You just over here paying your respects to Captain David Wayne Allen and Karen Franzblau. Dracula, Dead and Loving It, Police Squad. They're great movies of Leslie Nielsen. A lot of the movies, when I looked him up, I hadn't heard of before. He was in so much stuff. I'm glad that we got to pay our respects to such a great dude. You are literally everywhere. Everywhere. It's been a nice visit to Evergreen Cemetery. It's starting to rain a little bit. This is likely the most unhaunted place that we're going to visit in this entire video. There's one other place that I want to show you that I think is interesting and unique to Fort Lauderdale, but let's move on. I've been to Fort Lauderdale a few times, and I know that Fort Lauderdale has a lot of art around the city. This concrete structure behind me may not be haunting the city or the base of the apartment building here, the Olaf apartment building, one of those. But it is very cool nonetheless. And I wanted to bring you here just to show it to you because it's a feature of the city. You got to see it. This 30-foot tall concrete structure of a woman with her heart pulled open, displaying all these ferns, was made by Daniel Popper, local multidisciplinary artist. Beautiful piece. After a closer review, it was brought to my attention that these are all fake. And it does smell very plasticky in this structure. It's still really cool to see this thing. It's massive, very unique. Now it's time to move on to some real haunted stuff.
Oh, this is
Welcome to Wilton Manors. It's a small artsy community. It's a part of Fort Lauderdale. I'm here at the City Hall. What looks like a parking lot is the old City Hall. The new City Hall is right there, the police department and such. But here where this parking lot is where the building was torn down in 2010, but not before the city brought in Ghostbusters to check it out, because there were lots of stories of an apparition of a certain maintenance man, John Bold, that haunted the place in a friendly way. He was a nice guy, and he just loved his job so much he wanted to keep working, I guess. They say that John still haunts the new City Hall as well. Now, I haven't read or heard of anything that's happened here in the parking lot, but this is where the building was. Rest in peace, John, wherever you are. The reason it's believed that John is the ghost that haunts this area is because some of the guys that knew him, that worked with him here in City Hall, said that they specifically knew that it was him. They saw him after his passing, they knew it was John, so he made himself known. I wonder if that's still happening. Welcome to Hamarshi Village. Hamarshi is a similar word for New River. This building you see behind me was called the New River Inn from 1905 to 1955 when it was used as an inn. It switched hands and changed what it did over the years, but now it's a historical museum, which we're going to go check out, see if we can learn anything else about this area. However, next to this very old building is another couple of buildings we're going to take a look at in our search for the most haunted places in Fort Lauderdale, which these are. Read a lot about this place. Anxious to check it out. This is great already. I paid $10 for a self-guided tour. You can pay $15 for a guided tour, but they got a movie you can watch, so I'll learn a little bit of history of the building here.
This is the history of Fort Lauderdale. Thousands of college students onto Fort Lauderdale's beaches and established the city's reputation for fun in the sun.
That short film was very informative. I was wandering around the halls here. There's a lot of art in the History Museum. Some local artists are on display, and a ton of local historical information, like this about the casino pool. It was built in 1923. This room is interesting because you can create your own art. Now, it is said that there are 3 ghosts that haunt the halls of this old inn. One is an old rancher, possibly a Texas rancher with a tall brown hat and rancher clothes. One is a little girl that died of yellow fever. That was a big issue here in Fort Lauderdale. Several hundred younger people died of yellow fever at one point. And an old governor of Florida, Mr. Bryan. History on the boating part of culture around here. Some large yachts. How'd you like to hang out on the deck of this one? I love it. I love boating. I lived on a sailboat for several years in the other coast of Florida. So I'm always interested in boats and trailers and things like that. I always like small living spaces, and especially boats, once I found out you could live on them. Right here in Fort Lauderdale is where some of the biggest yachts in the world are. I haven't seen any of those, but I've read about it, reading about it now. In the hallway here are some artifacts apparently dug up from some debris over the years. Some stuff from the olden days of Fort Lauderdale here. There's a lot of evidence that's been discovered in the area that suggests that the Tequesta Indians had lived here for a couple of thousand years. They say 2,000, but I read online somewhere in the vicinity of 4,000 years of evidence has been found. So this whole part of the exhibit is explaining the Indian culture that still lasts today in the area, but very heavily for the last 4,000 years. This stone, which might be an old conch shell, I'm not really sure what I'm exactly looking at, because this doesn't explain what it is. It just talks about the prehistoric inhabitants, the Paleo Indians that lived here 14,000 years ago. And this might be a pretty old tool or artifact of some sort. Some of you might wonder, where's the fort in Fort Lauderdale? There's no fort. There was 3 forts in Fort Lauderdale, but all 3 have been destroyed over time. That's where the name came from. It was all forts that were built during the Seminole Indian Wars. There were 3 of those Seminole Indian Wars. The first of which wars started in 1817, and the last ended in 1858. There's one more floor upstairs. Let's go check that out. Guess we won't be checking that out. It's interesting to me that one of the old governors, Philemon Bryan, haunts this place. And once I found out that he had a lot to do with the property next door, it made more sense. So let's head over that way. The other 2 apparitions that are seen here, the girl and the rancher, well, the girl's seen all through the building, and the rancher's typically seen out here on this front porch, pacing around. I don't know if specifically is the 2nd floor porch or the downstairs, but that's where the apparition has been seen. Well, here in the History Center, there's some postcards for sale, along with some other stuff. They got some books and little trinkety things, necklaces and stuff. I'm gonna pick up a couple postcards. What do you say? Got some postcards, ready to move on, check out some other places around here. First, I wanna hang out on the front porch a little bit, maybe visit with the old rancher. I'm out here on the front porch enjoying the beautiful weather today. It's an interesting place. The canal goes right by here. I've seen a couple big yachts float by. The drawbridge is popping up there in the background. It's such a beautiful day here in Fort Lauderdale. I decided to upgrade my ticket from the self-guided tour to the guided tour. It's only $5 more, total $15, and they take you to the next couple of houses that I already had on my list anyway and give us a lot more detail. We get to get inside them, where if I didn't have the guided tour, I just have to stand out front and wish I was inside, wish we were inside. So I'm gonna wait around here for a little bit until the tour begins and just wander around this nice park area. The house here, as it's called, is also a historical landmark in the area. I'm not sure much of the history of this, but we might find out. On another note, look at the size of the staghorn ferns. Wow. As it turns, it's a French bakery and coffee shop and a / restaurant in the afternoon. So I'm gonna pass on that. Some high water today. Right next door to the River Inn, or the Historical Museum, is the King Cemetery House. Now, this house wasn't always in this location. It was posted up across the river. It was put on a barge and brought over here by the Women's League after somebody had bought the property it was on many years ago. They wanted to save the property, brought it over here so everything historical could be close together. Well, Ed King was the first contractor here in Fort Lauderdale. He built this house along with the New River Inn and several other places around town, including a schoolhouse. That schoolhouse will come into play in just a little bit, but for now, let's see what's going on here at Ed King's old homestead. The best I can do at the moment is peek in the windows. We'll come back and take a full tour when it's open in a few hours. Ed King was an interesting guy. There's not a whole lot of information about his life, but it seemed like from what I've read, he was a community man, did a lot of help for people around this area, not just building the buildings, of course. But Ed was tragically taken away from us on the anniversary of the 1926 hurricane. You might have heard of that. Destroyed Fort Lauderdale, gave over $1 billion worth of damage at our current rate at the time to the city. That was a lot of damage. It basically wiped out the city as it was being rebuilt. 2 years later, a hurricane happened on the exact day. Ed was helping out a couple of children get saved from the hurricane, got struck by some debris and killed. That was an unfortunate demise of Ed, but a great guy nonetheless. And they say that he haunts this house and the museum.
You know, one.
The tour is beginning.
That's where Ivy actually lived with
It's
her
already
husband,
awesome.
Frank Stranahan. Okay, we're all gonna something that. And that they
Dade
shipped
pine.
large.
It's so heavy. Look what this whole house is made of. 150 tons this little 2-story house weighs.
So, while you're standing
I bet
there,
it weighs
I'm gonna have
10
you
pounds.
over here, please. Okay. So, this house, there's the real address where the house was located. Here's the barge that's gonna bring this house here. The only damage to this house was the second story, as you can see in this picture, okay? So, follow the river down, take your finger,
Okay.
go all the way down. Keep going down, 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 and I'll find the next dot to your left.
Next dot right here.
Okay.
Okay.
So this house is designated to come here for history. Her husband at that time is Mr. Shaw, and 17th Street Causeway Bridge is named in his honor. The railroad tracks. She also owned all the land on Las Olas to Lake Marble. But Mary Brickell's the one that had the land. And she negotiated. There's a book called over here, on the viewer.
Oh, where are you cranking?
The
On the
very
side.
first one, 1877.
Yep, there it is. The name, Victrola. And all the needles are in that little box.
This is Mr. King when he was a little older. I like that mustache.
Mr. King had a handlebar mustache. His mug is in that cabinet.
This was Mr. King's actual coffee mug. It's made for
It makes
mustaches.
me kind of ill. Hey, party line.
Party line, party time. Looks a little googly-eyed, doesn't it?
Made in America.
It's a fun phone.
Oh, man, that
Croquet.
looks,
Yeah, look at that croquet game.
Yes.
Wouldn't you love to play with it?
I would.
Somebody can find it, number 29. It's right there on that shelf.
Put corn on
I think they called it a dipper.
Ah.
Not a scoop.
What, let him take a picture first.
No, they're dangerous.
Come on, I'm trying
Oh,
to
I hate it when I was.
Grain, and that's
For
where you
what?
flour. Grain.
put the wheat in there and then you grind it. That's very
And this
efficient.
is for flour.
For
Yeah,
flour?
this- Uh-huh. How about opening up a pineapple?
Oh, we still have that.
Yeah. Because you put this in a pie, and when it whistles, your pie's done.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Huh.
That's the
Little
blackbird.
songbird.
No, it's a blackbird from the poem.
You're
The
right.
nursery rhyme.
Oh. I get it.
Probably.
You're right.
What is it?
Icebox.
Oh.
Also that one, there's a beautiful picture of her wearing that one with the feathers.
It's a spyglass.
Yes. The lenses are really in. Might bump your head coming down. The children's. Oh, well, look up here.
There's a singer sewing machine, my grandmother.
No, that's not Singer. That's New Home for Massachusetts.
I'm here in the kids' room where the dollhouse is, which is said to be a very haunted spot in the house. There's people on tours that have refused to come into this room because they sense a spirit or something. That's
Oh, wow.
pretty peaceful to me. But it's also the middle of the daytime.
They're a pound each. They're exercising. Yeah.
1918, day at the beach with the
And what did we have in
King
2019?
family.
100 years later?
So the beauty setup
It's
for
the
the
same.
ladies is pretty much the same, except nowadays you don't have to screw in your curling irons into the light socket.
Till we've been looking
Clawfoot bathtub had a very similar one in my house when I was growing up.
He's actually here to do our ghost tour on the 7th because we have a famous person that actually has traveled the world. I want to take a look at that.
Look how tiny
I
these
just know that
shoes are.
that's in this house. I thought it was very clever.
Tiny.
The way it was.
Before gas lighting, they used acetylene gas. calcium carbide, I think is what they said, mixed with water. They would trap the gas and then pump that from this exact building where it sits right now, right over here to the inn and all of the buildings on this block. This was the original part of Fort Lauderdale, right here where we're standing, this small area. Kind of walked around the park by the water a little earlier. Now we're gonna walk into the schoolhouse, the original schoolhouse. There's a lot of history about this place. It's not the original schoolhouse, it's a replica because the first one doesn't exist anymore, but this is exactly what it looked like. When I said there were big yachts here, I meant it. That's what I was talking about. Oh no, school's in session.
Okay, have you all sit back there first, please?
It's been a long time since I've sat at these desks.
School is my desk. It's all placed, the other desk, of its time.
You got a spinny chair. You got the spinny chair. I got the stationary.
This was my chair, 3rd grade.
Really?
I'm serious. I flipped out when I saw somebody actually donated this
Wow. Well,
to the schoolhouse. It blew me away. Now let's read the newspaper article in front of you there to the left, please. And I'm gonna have somebody go over and get the walking stick. Solid bamboo.
is that how she controlled the class?
Walked with that. Snakes and alligators. She read the question in Mr. King's house and knows the answer. There's another beautiful picture of her above. And that's at Christmas time, the Stranahan Trading Post. The Christmas picture there. He's delivering the mail to Lemon City where she's living. Under where it says Louisa 16. Next picture in platinum, she's 18. And real pioneers only went to this school. Certainly welcome. Thank you for coming.
We learned a lot of history on this tour. Carolyn is so good at telling the story of all the people and places that Fort Lauderdale was founded on. Some believe that even in this exact building that was never seen by Ivy herself, they believe that Ivy actually haunts the schoolhouse.
Sandy.
She found it and haunts it.
There
are books here. This one's dated 1873 in pen. Now it's time to go back over to the inn. I guess there's something that I missed over here that we'll get a chance to take a look at. You get to see the 3rd floor, friends. And this is where it's really haunted. This whole upstairs, the 3rd floor, it's got a lot of artist studios. I'll show you a couple of those, but here is an example of what one of the rooms in the inn looked like. It's for $2 a night. This is what you got. And it included breakfast and dinner. Pretty amazing, huh? See, at the time that the inn was built, there was only 54 people that lived in Fort Lauderdale. So you didn't have any other options, as I've learned, to stay anywhere else. If you didn't have a room here, you had to camp out back. But the room we just saw is not what they think is really the most haunted room. The room that I'm about to show you is the room that is most haunted. All the work in here and some of the stuff that we saw downstairs is from this great artist, Florencia. And this is her studio. And this is her right there. But this art is so amazing.
Thank you.
Florencia.
Yes.
Did I say it properly?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm really impressed with your art in here.
Thank you.
You know, I liked walking around upstairs, and I have to admit, I don't sense any kind of spirits or anything haunting up here.
Mm-hmm.
But you got the most haunted room in the whole inn. How did you deal with this? Do you experience anything up here?
So when I first moved in here, the room that you saw earlier, that's the mock-up, was in this space, and apparently this was the room that had the ghosts, right? And when I moved in, I thought, well, what can I do? Because I really don't want to have a ghost in my room. So I asked the ghost to leave. I told him that unless he was going to be creative and add to my artwork, he couldn't stay and he was invited to occupy any of the other rooms. So I haven't had anything going in here, thank goodness.
Include no ghost paintings or anything like that has happened?
Not that I know of.
Well, it seems pretty peaceful in here.
Yes.
A nice place to create this amazing art.
Yes, thank you. More in public, just because I've got to do a presentation.
Well, Florencia has been showing me around to all these artist studios. Thank you very much
You're welcome.
for showing me around. This has been very nice. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
On the way down, I noticed this cabinet with all these dolls in it. It's a little unsettling, but I feel very peaceful in this place. I'm sure that there's stories of people and their things that have happened to them here, but not to me today. I've had such a nice time talking with the tour guide and all the people that worked here. The artists upstairs, very kind. It's not really feeling spooky to me, friends, I must say. I do have an appreciation for the history of these buildings now, much more than I did before I went on that tour. This house next to the King Camardi house that we just toured is the Philemon Nathaniel Bryan House. This was also built by Mr. King, but it's not available for tours because the family still owns this, the Bryan family, and it's just a private residence at the moment. Earlier in the video I said that it was a governor of Florida that haunted the inn. It wasn't a governor, it was a senator, Senator Bryan, who lived in this house with his wife Lucy. They were active in the community. There's some great stories about them I found online, but a very tragic story is that right here on the front steps, Lucy was shelling peas and her friends came up to visit. She was walking down these very steps when she slipped and fell, broke her pelvis, and just a couple of days later died. It was a tragic story, but right here's where it happened. And they say that the house is haunted with her ghost. Right at the base of this giant condo building is one of the most important, oldest, well-known houses in Fort Lauderdale, the Stranahan House. This is where Frank and Ivy Stranahan lived for many years. Ivy lived here until her olden days. She actually passed away in the bedroom upstairs here, heart condition. But Frank was a very important person in this town. I can't enter the property right now, but you see the store to the side of the house, post office, Stranahan and Go. And that was a very important store for the community of 52 people. Frank came down here from Youngstown, Ohio. He's a businessman and moved to this area, met his wife, Ivy, and they lived a nice life here. Frank, unfortunately, came down with tuberculosis and felt that he didn't want to put his wife through that agony of having to take care of him. And the Great Depression that just happened, he lost a lot of his money and ended up, unfortunately, meeting his demise by his own choice right here in this river. He took care of his affairs and then said goodbye to the world, unfortunately. It's been said that Frank and Ivy both reside still in their home. Ivy upstairs in the bedroom where she passed on, and Frank just wandering around the house. Sometimes people have said they've seen him jumping into the waterway. There's also reports of people seeing Frank at the New River Inn. He wears a suit, a top hat, and sometimes smokes a cigar and just stares at people and then vanishes. That's what's been said. We just walked from way over there underneath that building where the Stranahan House is, and here's the Henry Kinney Tunnel. There's a footbridge that appears to be closed off, but this bridge is another haunted location in Fort Lauderdale. If you are going under this bridge, don't be confused. It's not the Any Tunnel, it's the Henry Kinney Tunnel. Back in the 50s, this guy named Henry Kinney was a journalist for the Miami Herald, and he noticed a problem here in town. There was a traffic problem. There was a bridge right now where the tunnel was, and it caused a backup because it was a drawbridge and problems, you can imagine. So he petitioned through his efforts as a journalist to have a tunnel put in its place. Well, he succeeded. 1958, construction started. 1960, the tunnel was accomplished, and that was not everybody wanted that to happen. Miss Ivy Stranahan did not want that to happen. She was very much against it because it goes right underneath her property. So all that construction and everything she wasn't a fan of that. But it passed, and now it is called, upon his passing several years ago, it was named the Henry Kenny Tunnel, which is, many people say, haunted by Henry Kenny himself. People have seen him running across the roadway. He's wearing a brown derby hat and a brown suit. And also, there's a couple other people that might be haunting the tunnel. There's other apparitions that have been seen running up and down and across the roadway, scaring drivers for years. So I'm gonna take a drive down and see what we can see, since we can't walk through the tunnel at this time. Let's go take a drive. This is a nice park. Pretty big plot of land. I'm right across the New River from the Stranahan House here at Smoker Park. This park is also haunted. It's interesting that we're so close in proximity. It could be the same ghost that haunt the place. However, here it's not so specific that it's a person in a specific hat or a coat. There's a tree in the park that people have experiences around. Let's go check it out. We're scanning the park for large and old trees, and so far I think the largest one is this one over here. It looks like a pin oak. I could be wrong. We're gonna walk around a little bit more. This tree looks really old and has a fence around it. I'm not sure if that signifies anything. It may not. It's a pretty big tree. When people get around this tree, especially at nighttime, they experience someone poking them and nudging them along, which, having that physical interaction with a supernatural entity is pretty rare. But here, apparently it happens all the time. Now I see a very large tree. This might be it. There's this banyan tree, but those grow pretty quick. And then I see this oak tree. It doesn't grow so quick. It's very much the largest one in the whole park. Are you the one poking people? Is it you? It might be you. You look guilty. These squirrels are really out of control. It looks like they're gonna, look at this guy, he's gonna jump on me or something. What do you think he's got food? I really think it's you guys poking people around here. Whoa, what was he doing? Friends, I haven't experienced any kind of poking or prodding here in Smoker Park. It's a very nice day out here, and the only thing that's really being a nuisance are these pesky squirrels back here. But I'm sure they're friendly little dudes. Friends, thanks for joining me here in Fort Lauderdale on this tour of some haunted locations. I'm sure there's plenty more haunted places around town. In fact, I saw several more, but we're running out of time. But someday we'll make it back here and check out the rest. I appreciate your company, and I'll see you in the next video.